welcome to Busted Speakers. I'm Kush,
And it's Alex.
and today we're here with a guest, Lee from Lee Likes Music.
Hey guys, what's up?
And today we're going to be reviewing Father John Misty's new album, Pure Comedy. And I don't know how much experience you guys have had with Father John Misty, but I really loved his last album, and he's always been this more interesting character in the face of like singer-songwriter indie music, and obviously he's been a drummer for Fleet Foxes on Helplessness Blues, which is another fantastic album. So I've enjoyed his work up until now, and I actually liked Pure Comedy as opposed to a lot of people who called him pretentious and threw it out of the window. But I actually really enjoyed it.
Yeah, honestly, this is my first introduction to Father John Misty, so I've never heard anything of his other albums before. I know that a lot of people say that I think it was his first album. I'm not quite sure, but I think it was maybe Fair Sun or I Love You Honey Bear. I watched some other people review it on YouTube, and they said it was like one of the best albums that they had ever heard. So I guess it's something that I should check out. And I honestly like this album quite a lot, actually, because yeah, as you said, a lot of people might perceive him as pretentious, but honestly, my view or my first impression of him is that he's just like an honest guy who just wants to share what's on his mind, and that really came through. It came through in a very pure way on the record, I feel. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. This is also my first experience with him, and yeah, I feel like his reputation precedes him slightly. Like, people hear about him before they hear him, in a way. But I really like this album as well. I don't really focus on lyrics too much, so that didn't really bother me. I just thought it was a nice sounding piano rock type singer-songwriter album, basically.
Yeah, it actually reminded me a bit of like some Pink Floyd, like classic rock stuff, and I really enjoyed that. But honestly, I think that maybe you, Alex, you don't care that much about the lyrics or the lyrical context, but I think that is what really kind of pushed my buttons when it came to this album, because he goes really deep into like what is happening in our society and how technology is kind of interfering with our development, and especially like immediately on the first song on Pure Comedy, which is also the name of the album, of course. You get to hear that he is kind of going against the grain, I guess, or not against the grain, but he is kind of, how can I put it?
He's definitely like calling out things that he sees rather than just like watching and seeing idly. He's showing like how industries are like. He says one line where he says they're poisoning our children to make billions. Where he's talking about alcohol and cigarette companies, and he's also calling out like religious people in a sense, saying that you never give these people options. You just say since birth that they have to believe this, and you never give them a chance to really explore what they really want to believe in, if they want to believe in anything at all. So he's just like saying commentary on things that are going on, which is just a really interesting way of doing it, because this is probably a more, I would say, societal, political album than his last one. It's much more based on the things going on now rather than like other events in his life. And I think the way he puts it is a very interesting way, because he is a critic, he's a cynic, but I think he knows that in a sense, because he seems pretty self-aware. Like in the song Ballad of a Dying Man, which is probably my favorite song on the album, he talks about this man who's dying, and he's kind of being kind of satirical about it, where he's like, this man thinks his opinion actually matters, and he says that after he passes away that he won't, like, people are going to mourn his death, saying that where are we going to get our information or opinions from now. So I think he knows that he's a guy who has opinions and he's singing about them, but he also knows that you don't have to take him seriously at all, because he's just that's all he is a singer.
He's just another person, and it doesn't really matter what he's doing at the end of the day. So he is kind of taking himself seriously, but at the same time he is kind of detached from the record. And yeah, that is just awesome.
Yeah,
a great approach to making an album in the first place, I think.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Ballad of a Dying Man. I actually thought a lot of this album was quite funny when I really got into the lyrics, because that had like him saying he was checking his like phone feed for news during his last breath to check out the things he'll miss out on when he dies. So but Dying Men Another Day, yeah. It's another
it's
good
a really
one.
good commentary on society of how we like how in these vital times we spend a lot of time like on technology and stuff, which are things I agree with, but are things that also like I do like I spend a lot of time on my phone on the computer just goofing off and not really paying attention to other things. And I think he makes some valid points, and people are complaining that he's being really like bitchy about it, and he's always like preaching what he says instead of like trying to make any change. But like, isn't that the point of like his art form? The point of his art form is that he has a platform to sing whatever he wants. The reason he's famous is because someone resonates with him for that. Like, someone gets some value out of what he's saying, and that's the reason he's famous. If there were no value, he wouldn't be as popular as he is today. And I think that has some merit to where he's going now.
Yeah, I've heard people get annoyed by what he's saying, like as if he's saying it judging people or something like that, but I didn't feel like that. I feel like he's annoyed at certain people on here, but I thought there was, like I said, I thought there was a lot of humour on here. Like, people hate the song Total Entertainment Tonight. Like, they hate the first few lines, but I like that song. It was like what you were saying, Kush, about we have so much freedom of entertainment today. Like, there's something Roger Waters actually tapped into with Amused to Death, and that was back in the 90s, so now, but he's saying like we love to be entertained, but all the channels are the same. Sometimes I do actually feel like there is too much to be entertained by these days. Like, there's too many albums to listen to, definitely, but everything has such a tongue-in-cheek vibe to it that I don't take it too seriously, and the melodies on this
thing. I don't
thing.
think you should. I think the point of this album is that it's meant to be more just him getting things off his chest, and like I don't think he even expects anyone to take it seriously, because he's self-aware on a lot of these records and a lot of these tracks where he says things like, yeah, we have opinions, but my opinion is not any more valid than yours, so you don't have to get upset at me for saying what I want to say. Like, you're as entitled to your opinion as you want to be. No one's gonna stop you from doing that.
I really like the approach that he had on this album, and what you're saying as well, that, you know, everyone has their own opinion, and each and every one of us have their own perceptions about music and the things that we create.
Well, we can talk about how Leaving LA, the 13-minute track, I don't know what you guys felt about it, but
is that the track with all of those verses? Like, the verses go over and over and over again? Like,
yeah. It's 10 verses.
Yeah.
It's like a big Bob Dylan type song.
I actually really like that song. And I love the fact that he is actually mentioning it as like self-irony in the middle of the song as well. Like, I don't know exactly the lyrics, but he mentions like, 10 verse riff. What are people gonna say about me now? People are gonna go nuts and think, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? But he's like, this is what I'm doing.
Well, he says on the song that's another white guy in 2017 taking himself too seriously.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He's very self-aware. He knows who he is, and he knows the persona he has. And I'm pretty sure a lot of this pretentiousness is more of like an act just to sell himself more. I don't think he's really this pretentious in real life. But no. He knows that people are going to end up taking him too seriously, and he's also self-absorbed himself because he loves the things he does. And he even says that people are going to keep asking for the same old stuff, but he's making the music for himself, and this is his project. He doesn't need you to tell him what he needs to do. He's doing it for himself and not really for someone else.
That song is a test, though. I mean, 13 minutes. I did enjoy it. The playing was good, the singing was good, and it had some nice string sections which added some colour to the whole song, but it is a test.
You think it was too lengthy?
I do think so. Like, around the 9-10 minute mark, I was already wanting it to be over. I mean, it's well played, it's good, but I don't know. Without the orchestrations, I'd find it a lot harder to listen to, I guess.
But it's almost like it's almost like a prog song. You just have to like sit back and kind of absorb it, and that is how I approached that song. I was just sitting back and taking it all in, and I think I'm maybe a little bit more patient than you, Alex. I'm not sure, but for me, and that is just off of the top of my mind. I don't know for sure, but I don't know. I really like that song. It came as a bit of because it's not that dynamic either. It's very much samey all the time from start to finish. Yeah. Maybe there's like small dynamic change, like some alterations in the instruments or whatnot, but I don't know, I just soaked it in and I liked it.
I was listening to it way too much, like trying to focus on the lyrics. I couldn't relax listening to it.
Yeah, I think this is one of the things that you have to take into account when you listen to music, that sometimes you're just not in the mood for that type of music. And I guess that is the reason why when you listen to any album, you should listen to it many, many times before you actually get to know it and familiarize yourself, because a record or a song can sound one way the first day, and then it can sound completely different another day, because the song is kind of painting, it's being recreated by your perception again. Now this is a bit off trail, but yeah.
No, that's a fair point. I think this album, a lot of people when they first listened to it, they weren't in the mood to be lectured about news and politics and technology, so I think they were just off put by that initial just him going off and talking about these things. And I think these kind of singer-songwriter, another one that comes to mind is the Sun Kil Moon Mark Kozlik record that came out earlier this year. A lot of people are off put by it because he's going off and talking about things and putting his opinion forward. But this is his art. No one is asking you to listen to it. So you can take it with his opinion as a grain of salt. You don't have to be offended by what he's saying, because that is all it is an opinion. So it does depend on the context you listen to it as well.
I thought the song When the God of Love Returns There'll Be Hell to Pay, that's probably my favourite. And that's actually a Sun Kil Moon type title if I've ever seen one.
Yeah.
That's just such an interesting narrative of that song, like a god of love coming down to earth, and he's dismayed and confused by how bad the world's going. But then Father John Misty turns to the god of love and explains he should have been more present, and that you shouldn't judge them, that the world's turned to crap because I don't know, the god of love wasn't there.
A dichotomy going where he talks about like, this is the god of love, but he's judging us, so how is that going to work out? He's talking about like, he's poking the holes there. He's like, if the God really does love us, then he would love us unconditionally and not judge us about what our opinions or what our decisions are.
That's true. I just found that a really interesting lyrical idea.
I don't know how much you know about his backstory, but he grew up in like this very like super like religious family, and the moment he got out of his family household, he experienced these more like, I guess, atheist and agnostic thoughts, he dropped religion right away, and that's why a lot of his things are very, very religiously, tons of religious imagery throughout his whole album, like in every song, I would say.
It's so weird that is kind of his relative, because there are I think there are quite a lot of artists who share that same background, and I don't know how many people include that in their lyrics and then in their music, but there's this other guy that I have become a super big fan of over the last couple of months. I don't know if you guys have heard about him, but it's called David Besson.
No, I have not heard about him.
No, he's a very underground-ish artist, but he's been creating music for many, many years now. And his newest album, which is called, what is it called again?
Which guy is this, sorry?
David Besson. So he basically, my point is that he basically has the same story as Father John Misty. He came from this very, very religious background, and now he's kind of seen as this leader in terms of people just standing for what they truly believe in, and what he's speaking up about in his music, sometimes in his songs, and especially when he's out doing concerts as well, is just how people should believe in what they believe in. You know, a lot of people are restricted within these barriers of thinking whatever other people before them have been thinking about religion, like, okay, I have to think this way and I have to follow these norms because if I don't do it, God won't accept me. And I think that a lot of artists, maybe not a lot, but at least some artists like John Father Misty and David Besson are kind of taking this stance against religion, maybe because it's limiting the growth of the culture or something. I don't know. I know that Americans, or this is my understanding of it, many Americans are still heavily affected by religion, but here in Norway it's quite different. But yeah.
Yeah.
it's something Scotland, I have to ask you guys about, especially you, Kush. I don't know.
Oh yeah, the religious tension in America is really, really really evident because there are a lot of like very strong religious people, and there are so many religions. Like there's so much diversity here that it causes a lot of conflict. And the moment people there's a lot of people who are like brought up as religious, and then they have that situation going on for them. And a lot of people who are not religious and then want to be religious, and there's people who are religious and then become not religious. So there's a lot of changing and transitioning in America, and because of so many religions, that people like the amount of like I guess agnosticism and atheism is on the rise because like which one's the right religion? How do you know which one's right, and so on.
Yeah.
I feel like religion isn't... I think it's similar to Norway and Scotland. It's not really a problem here. It's actually almost non-existent unless you go looking for it, almost.
Yeah, I mean, people are very, very little... I haven't seen that many people who go to church anymore, or... Of course, we do it in the holidays, but other than that, it's not that evident, I guess. But anyways, back to the record. I feel like we're trailing so much off. Maybe it's my fault, I don't know. But
well, it's interesting to talk about.
Yeah, and it's within the context of the record as well, because it's just such a broad like spectrum of different themes going on in this record. Like one of my favorite songs is "So I'm Growing Old on Magic Mountain," and I actually resemble this song a lot to I think it's called "Train" by John Mayer. And you guys heard this song or?
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I think
the only John Mayer I've listened to is the Continuum album.
Oh yeah, that's an amazing album, man. virtual fist bump for that one.
Thanks.
But yeah, so I'm growing old on Magic Mountain. I just love that song because it sounds like Misty is pouring out his heart about the things that he has experienced before on this mountain. I don't know if Magic Mountain is actually a place or not. It's probably a place. And he has these memories that he's looking back at, and he's singing that there's no one old on Magic Mountain, and how he is now kind of growing old, and he's, I don't know, it sounds like he's almost, it sounds like he can't be a part of that community on Magic Mountain anymore because he's growing old, and he is kind of looking back at his past and feeling this nostalgic but also tragic feeling towards it. So I don't know, for some reason that really catered to me. Although I'm not old, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly what you said about that song, basically. It's just, he has such interesting ways of talking about things on this album that, yeah, basically what you said there, yeah.
Yeah.
I think I think in 20 years or so is a perfect closer. It's him having an existential crisis and realizing nothing matters in the grand scheme of things. So then he goes on trying to justify him living by proving he does matter and putting up music that he hopes will even impact. And I think it's a really good thing to think about, at least for him, because he's older now. He's 30s, maybe 40 years old now, and he's finally hitting that midlife crisis where he's feeling like holy shit, life is so short and really meaningless because we're all just on this giant space rock that's hurtling around and we don't really mean much. So he's trying his best to leave an impact and leave some sort of impression on someone, but we'll see. And then he always says, like, it doesn't matter. In the end, it's always, the world will keep turning. We're all going to be okay in the end.
I saw an interview with him and he said, like, I set out to be a real person and now I'm portrayed as a character.
Well, there's a couple other songs that are really good. The Memo is a really cool song where he talks about socio-cultural dynamics of America, and he says one line where and as the world is getting smaller, small things take up all your time. Narcissists would have had a field day if he could have gotten online. Like that line is so good because it is true. People have become so self-centered about ever since like Facebook, because like you always gotta post pictures, you gotta tell people what you're doing, you gotta like prove to people that you have friends and show things like that. And I've never been a big fan of social media. I don't really do too much on social media, but I think that it is quite evident that there is this more self-centered, almost narcissistic personality that has grown since.
Well, at least you managed the Busted Speakers social medias, though, Kush.
I was about to say it, like, oh, you're all over YouTube. We all are. So it's like, yeah.
That's true. I took that
we
song
we're
way
all a
too.
part of it anyways. It's impossible to stop it, because
Yeah.
if you're not a part of social media, it's like people will look weird at you. And yeah, I guess Father John Misty is just proving that point, that you can't really escape from it. So
Yeah.
That song, The Memo, I took way too literally, because he's talking about stealing bed sheets from amputees and stealing white boys from families. And that was before I knew there was like a metaphor there. I was just thinking, what the hell's going on here, lads? I mean...
so what's
oh,
so that is metaphor? I didn't get that. Can you explain?
I don't know.
I think with the bed sheet from amputees is he's kind of talking about like, you're just causing more damage to people who are already who are already struggling. You're just causing more damage to them in America, in terms of like the things that like the government and other people are doing. And then I think he like with stealing white boys from families. It's like I think he's just talking about like how impractical that sounds, because normally when you hear about like kids being kidnapped, they're either minorities or females, and he's just talking about how wild it would be to have a white child be kidnapped. It'd be crazy. So he's really just trying to he's pushing people's buttons, and people who don't like lean with him like all the way on political stances are gonna be really angry with him because of the things he says. And that's another reason, because the moment you bring politics into an album, you're already gonna have a very polarizing album and have a lot of discussion about it.
I don't know, I just heard those at face value and they sounded weird to me.
Oh yeah, for sure. Style, and we never talked about his instrumentation, which is pretty stripped back and pretty low key, but it does get loud, and it does fit the tone when he needs it to be, which is a really good aspect to it.
Have you guys heard like the album called Morning Face by Beck? Because he's another like folk rock artist, and that is an amazing album as well. So if any one of you guys who are listening, if you like this album by Father John Misty, you should definitely check out Beck as well. If you haven't heard him, he is a legend. But I think that this,
indeed.
Yeah, and I think that this album has a lot of resemblances to maybe his newest album, that Morning Face one, except for the fact that this one sounds a bit more orchestral. I mean, he has a freaking big orchestra together with him. Like, there's piano here, there's violins, there's some big epic drums in some of the songs. I can't exactly pinpoint which one of the songs that are using the different elements, but yeah. It's a very epic song, or very many epic songs, and it's just fueled and infused by these orchestral instruments, and I really, really enjoy that. So
the weird thing about this album is that I thought a lot of it would remind me more of Fleet Foxes, but the only song that really did was Birdie, because it sounded a bit more folk-like, and sounded a bit like someone like James Taylor, who's an old singer-songwriter from the 70s. Nice acoustic guitar strums, and it's basically the vocal humming towards the end was a bit reminiscent of the Fleet Foxes. It's decent songs on here, I'd have to say.
So Alex, what would you rate this album?
Now, Leaving LA takes up a large part of this album, and it was a test for me. And but I liked a lot of this. You know, title track, Total Entertainment Tonight, Ballad of the Dying Man, and my favourite, When the God of Love Returns, There'll Be Hell to Pay, are great tunes that everyone should check out, because they're really funny in some regards, really thought-provoking, really clever. I'm going to give this a light 7 out of 10. It's pretty solid stuff. I'm sure he's probably made better stuff than this, but yeah, I like this.
Lee, would you like to give it a rating?
Yeah, but it's not going to be too original. I think I'll give it a 7 out of 10 as well. I think this is, in a way, kind of stupid, because we're all going to be affected by each other in one way or another, I feel. But I know that you guys have been doing like podcasts where you completely differ in terms of the rating as well. So, but yeah.
Not as much as you'd think, though. We haven't had a really severely different rating ever.
Really?
I don't think it's always been within.
I think the closest one would be the Sleaford Mods, where I gave it like a 4 and you guys gave it like a 6. So
yeah, but I'll
stick
with
2.
I'll stick with a 7. I really enjoyed this, and I think that this is an album that will just mold in my mind as I continue to listen to it, or at least I have that is what my intuition is telling me about this album. I liked Pure Comedy. I listened to that one before the album actually came out. Total Entertainment Forever, really loved that one. And Ballad of a Dying Man is a really good one as well, in my view. And the best one is also So I'm Growing Old on Magic Mountain. That really set the kind of the highlight for me. But anyways, other than that, I think all of the songs had quite a nice quality to them, and there was a nice flow in the album as well. Although I don't feel like there was a lot of dynamics, like instrumentally, there was certainly jumps from one emotion to another. Some of the songs were very like not obvious, but very truthful, very heartfelt. Some songs were sad, others were felt pretty positive, and I like that jump between the different emotions and moods. So yeah, it's quite a good album in my view, and I would suggest it to anyone. So yeah, 7 out of 10.
Yeah, so for me, I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10 as well.
Just call
why so
haven't-
original,
you guys-
huh? Why?
You guys haven't affected my view at all. I rated that before I even came on this
Okay.
this channel. And me and Alex tend not to talk about it until the actual review, that's to like influence each other. But this album, it was not as good as I Love You, Honey Bear. That was still probably my favorite from him. I think he did have a lot of good speaking points, a lot of good points, and his lyricism is just wonderful on some of these albums. He does get a little pretentious and he does get a little preachy at some points, but I think that's part of his personality and part of his like the reason why people keep coming back to him. There's not really like any other reason why people would come back to him. And his instrumentation was a bit bland at some points, where it was just a guitar and not much else. But I think that overall it's a really good album, and you should definitely check it out if you love singer-songwriter things. And I think he's getting a lot of unnecessary hate for making it a political album.
Yeah.
Just because of like the political climate in the world right now, it's a big problem. So, there's only like one song which I was okay, which I didn't enjoy as much, was Birdie, but most of the other songs were really good, really, I guess moving and touching at some points. And just check this album out; it's worth it.
It is worth it. And check Lee Likes Music out as well. Top channel.
Woohoo! Yeah. Hell
We'll link it in
yeah.
the description. Make sure you check him out. Well, that's it then. Thanks for tuning in to Busted Speakers. We hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you like and subscribe. Let us know what you think about this album in the comments below. Check out Lee Likes Music, top link in the description, and check us out on social media.